Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Is This Urban Fantasy Game Show with your host, me. Hey guys, it's Kate. I'm trying a different angle on my room today. So today I just recently did a post on my blog about defining what urban fantasy is. You know, it's one of those genres or subgenres that is a bit of a cross-section between many genres. You know, it's got a little bit of horror in it. It's got a bit of a little thriller. It's got an adventure. There's a bit of hard-boiled in there with the crime solving that's quite popular in the genre. And it also has, you know, the fantasy elements, your supernatural creatures and myths come to real life, etc. But there are a few staples that I think narrow it down. If you want to read more about my definition of urban fantasy, I'll put the link to the blog post down below. But let's just say that for me, urban fantasy has to have an urban setting, a hard-boiled character, and supernatural creatures that introduce moral quandary and have a horror feel to them. Okay, these are not nice supernatural creatures. An urban fantasy should have like 80% adventure, okay? Some sort of crime solving, some sort of goal, there's a mystery, something. Give me something to hold on to for 80% of the book. And then for the rest of the 20%, you can tell me about the character and their personal drama, whether their friends getting married and they haven't gotten married and they feeling the pressure from their family, or I don't know, they are in a really bad relationship and they're thinking of breaking up, or they just be getting it on because they are one night stand kind of man and that's what they're doing with life right now, whatever, okay? But like, don't give me too much relationship, personal drama, just 20%. 20% is a good number. Heck, if you're like being really, really on the extreme side, maybe 30%, but once you cross 40, you no longer writing urban fantasy. I don't care what you say. So, given that definition, I thought I'd take a look at maybe 3 series or books that I feel kind of either personify, straddle the line, have crossed over this definition, and let's see. Are they really urban fantasy? The first series I thought I would discuss, because I love talking about it so much, of course, is Twilight. Twilight is often categorized as urban fantasy. I cannot say that I agree with this classification. Twilight straddles urban fantasy and the paranormal romance line very strongly. It has enough urban fantasy elements that I feel like, yeah, I can see why it almost often gets categorized as urban fantasy. Forks is a perfectly fine setting. Urban doesn't necessarily mean a city. It doesn't actually have to be in the middle of St. Louis or Chicago or New York or, I don't know, even Melbourne, like the Riley Jensen series, or any major city. It just means that the setting has to feel built up enough, have enough number of people, enough infrastructure and everything in order to give it that grittier edge that urban settings have. When you're in a city or you're in a town, there's a certain context, culture, and setting that is very different than when you're in a more rural setting. So, Forks works. That is not the problem. The problem is there ain't no hard-boiled character up in there. Bella Swan is not a hard-boiled character. She is just your average girl. And once you start having just your average person, but somehow is special, okay? She got that Mary Sue, oh my God, there's something special about me. All the boys be loving me for no good for second reason because I don't even understand. She doesn't even understand it herself. Then we got a problem. Bella's investigation stops at, hey, Edward, I think you're a vampire. And can you confirm that? And then it gets confirmed within the first book. There is never any inner desire for her to strive to be better, which is actually quite pathetic in a character. Part of what makes urban fantasy so desirable is that the characters in some way want to be better, either because they have to be or because they have an innate drive. A lot of urban fantasy characters have to be better because of their job. If they have a physically demanding job, they have to be, if they're a female in a male-dominated industry, if they just have a nose for trouble, or they have a lot of friends who get into trouble, so they kind of get dragged along the way. There has to be something about the character that prompts their getting into a mystery or adventure, and Bella has nada. All of the adventure in the Twilight series comes externally. If James hadn't been the sociopath who feels like he can hunt down any human he well pleases, then there would have been nothing at the end of Twilight. It wasn't because of Bella, it wasn't because of Edward, it was just because James was a creep and, well, he creeped on her. She was just the lucky random winner. Her Mary Sue powers happened to attract the wrong kind for once in her life. The character is not hard-boiled. When I see how much effort Anita Blake put into being the best, how much she's continually taking different classes to, up her martial arts game, because one day there will be somebody who has a longer reach, and there's that threat for her. There's this real threat that if she doesn't do something, continually improve herself, she gonna die. Bella never has that. Oh, the Volturi are coming to kill me. Well, let's just turn me into a vampire, then they won't have any reason to turn me. She wanted to be a vampire anyway. There was no risk. There was no sacrifice. There was nothing. The other problem I had was the horror element with the supernatural creatures. Once you say you're vampires, which is a good creature to have that can introduce so much moral complexity and intricacy into your story, and you just say they're vegetarian and they drink animal blood. First of all, I know you vegan and vegetarian people up in there will be like, wait, no, that's not right, that's morally incorrect, corrupt, whatever. They had to get the blood from somewhere, dudes, okay? I'm sorry, but they had limited options. Like, considering how big the Cullen family is, they couldn't just go to your local butcher and say, hey, can I have some pig's blood or something? Because the amounts they would have needed would have just been too noticeable, okay? Edward's little performance to try and scare Bella off was just that, a performance. And once you know someone is just trying to scare you off, it immediately takes off the threat, the risk, anything that adds that grit and that intensity to urban fantasy. And the people, the villains in the show, have nothing to do. Well, yes, they are sadistic because they were sadistic as when they were alive, and that's fine. But morality never becomes a really big issue. It is a sideline thing to the romance between Bella and Edward. When Stephenie Meyer has that scene where Edward tells Bella, hey, I went through this part of my life where I was rebelling and I was feeding on human blood, that would have been a great place for her to just be like, how could you, Edward? You killed people and you liked it. You did it for 10 years, was it? You did it for a really long time. I don't know if I could be with someone like that. She then had to kill any of that tension by saying, oh yeah, I was feeding on serial killers. It's hard to build a moral quandary when you put a limit on it. It's like watching Dexter. He was a serial killer, yes, but he was killing other serial killers. Does that make him a bad guy? Yeah, he probably shouldn't be killing, but on the other hand, he probably saved more lives by doing his serial killing. So really, it's such a gray area that nobody's going to feel threatened by him because, well, unless you've been serial killing, you ain't got nothing to worry about. Geez, thanks for killing that. And then all the other horror elements are almost comedic. Arrow is so flighty and so flamboyant, and God, don't get me about his portrayal in the books. That laugh, don't even talk about that laugh. But it's so off page or off screen, whatever you want to call it. You don't get to see it. It is just one incident when they're coming out of Voltura, and Bella sees the tour group that is going to be Voltura chump. And that's it. Okay? The movie did a better job because you get to see other points of view. But when you look at it from the books, which is Bella's point of view, and Jacob's actually, then you don't really get to see it. And as much as the wolves have this higher morality that vampires are wrong and evil, they're fighting against vegetarian vampires. I don't think they ever seen any evil. I mean, the real vampires that initially caused the shifting in the first place, those were great. If the story had been about that kind of vampire, the dichotomy, the fight between Edward and Jacob would have been so much stronger, so much more important, so much more intense. This is why people can be Team Jacob or Team Edward, and they can flop back and forth, and there's no wrong or right, because none of them are wrong. You know what I mean? There's no polarizing morality in Twilight. And even the thing about Edward breaking up with her, at that point, I was so bored with the story that I didn't really find it immoral. I mean, okay, I can understand why he was doing it. I thought it was a stupid reason, but there wasn't actually anything immoral with that decision. And she was even more stupid for doing stupid things to try to get a boy who left her in the woods back, because that's just stupid. Why would you want him back? When I really classify, and when you look at the action versus romance, okay, you've got to say at least 70% of the book was romance. That's it. Everything, all the action, all the more scary elements was a very small percentage of the book. Like I said, it was an afterthought, it was a side note. And one of the romance publishers strictly states that when they say paranormal romance, they mean 70% romance, 30% anything else, which is action, thrilling, whatever, all those other components from those genres that we were talking about at the beginning of this video. That's what Twilight is. So for me, for those reasons, that's why I don't consider it urban fantasy. It came close, but it didn't hit that ratio. Those ratios, man, are golden, okay? They're golden. That is why the same people who read Twilight don't read the Anita Blake series, especially like the first 9, maybe 10 books, okay? Okay, stomach, I get it. I'm hungry. I'm gonna have lunch after this video. Okay, the second series I'm going to talk about is the Mercy Thompson series. I know I've talked about this, but the Mercy Thompson series started urban fantasy. It did, and I enjoyed like the first three books, 3, 4, I don't know. Check out that video. I'll link it up somewhere here and check it out. And I'm pretty sure I say which book that I was like, okay, now this is just too much. But I loved the Mercy Thompson series. Mercy's character was hard-boiled, okay? And I liked the way that it wasn't her initiating the mystery. She was kind of everybody's Dr. Fix-It. She was their Olivia Pope. She knew somebody who could help them, and that's how she always got involved. That was such a new, at least for me, way of introducing mystery into a character who would otherwise not have been in those circumstances, and I really enjoyed that. It was really unique, and I really loved it. But the romance once again took over, and part of it, and one of the main contentions everybody has is that, what's his name? Oh my God, I can't believe Adam. There we go. Nearly called him Aaron. Adam has such a domineering personality, and once again, it's one of those societies that are a bit misogynistic. So he be laying down the law to Mercy a lot, and therefore, as the series progresses, it's like she doesn't have permission to do anything without his giving his say-so, and that became a problem because it meant that anytime she does anything, even if it's helping out a friend, he gets involved, which introduces romance elements that otherwise wouldn't have been there. Problem. Too much romance, that ratio is getting moving back to the 50-50 mark, and as you do that, painful. But you know what? It had an urban setting, and God, their monsters were freaky. They were freaky, and I love the morality that she introduced, especially with her Volkswagen vampire buddy, Stefan, I think his name is. Stefan, I think. And his little blood donators, and oh my God, it's a nice way of showing that, yes, even though you are something potentially dangerous, that doesn't mean you have to do it. And if you were a good person to begin with, being a vampire ain't gonna make you a bad person. It's just going to mean that you probably have things that other people might see as worse, but you make the best out of it that you can. Otherwise, if you were a sadistic, crazy person to begin with, you go and keep being that, and now you have even more tools to be sadistic and creepy with. God, I can't find a comfortable position today. Okay, water bottle, move over. Okay. Now, the other problem with the Mercy Thompson series is nothing. It was otherwise flawless. This is why I was so annoyed. If she just could dial back that romance element, and it's not necessarily gooey romance, but it removed Mercy's independence, and that impacted her hard-boiledness, if I could say it that way, as a character. Because she was so empowered and she was basically a information broker, that gave her her thing. Now, if she can't even do that, which is quite removed from the action. I mean, I know she found herself in those situations, but initially, she's now quite removed from that because Adam is being too overprotective over someone who otherwise wouldn't be in danger. I couldn't. The number of scenes where they're together just got too much. Too much. And he was always asking for too much, damn it. Okay? Like, dude, take a chill pill. Take 7 steps back and take a chill pill. The third series I'm going to discuss is the Anita Blake series. I love me some Anita Blake. But let me say, I acknowledge the fact that the first 9 books until Obsidian Butterfly, because like Obsidian Butterfly was like the best. Like, oof, that is a book I will reread and reread until I die. It was that good, okay? But after that, the direction of the series changed. Yes, I still read the series because I'm curious where it's going to end. Because, well, I already read the first 9 books. Well, now I read all of them, but I mean, I've already made a big investment, so why the heck shouldn't I keep going, you know? And, well, as a psychology major, relationship drama intrigues me. I think it's a good example of when ratios go wrong in a more clear manner. At the beginning of the series, it was predominantly Anita being hard-boiled in an urban setting, fighting the monsters with horror elements to the extreme. Well, not extreme, but in a very strong way. It was so good. And yes, there was about 20%, once again, that 20%, 80-20 is a good ratio. That 20% of Ronnie and her drama and her parents and Manny and Bert and all the other people in her life who don't actually have to do with her hunting vampires, such as Edward and stuff like that, okay, everybody else was there. I felt like I learned more about them each and every book, but it was just enough to satisfy me that Anita's life is not just vampire hunting or being the executioner or war or whatever you want to call her, because she has so many titles about being a badass, right? That was great. Then, after Obsidian Butterfly and the Ado was introduced, the problem became that she began to change the character with force, first of all. So for a hard-boiled character, yes, Anita had every right to be kicking, screaming. Everybody said she was always whining about not wanting to do things, and she just does them at the end of the day. She did them because she had to. She was forced, yes. And as a hard-boiled character, you stubborn. And when you're stubborn, you go and resist, even though you do it anyway. I do it all the time. I'm sure you know many people who will say they won't do something, or they just say no just so that you register protest, but they go and do it. They're going to change anyway. That's okay. But the relationship drama and how she explored the character's growth, of which there was very little actually, became a problem. Because every time Anita interacted with one of her sweeties, there was always a problem in their relationship that Anita didn't quite want to deal with because, well, she didn't want to be in the relationship in the first place, or because, well, she felt like she was changing in a way that she didn't want to change. It became labor intensive, and all the drama in the book started focusing more on her internal. If you look at the characters GMC, goals, motivations, and conflicts, it was a lot of internal conflict between her and herself and hating who she's becoming, and then also between her and her lovers, that it's about their feelings, it's about their eternal state of being rather than them reacting to it and outside threat together. Because when they were like back in the day when Jean-Claude was like, yo, there's some bad vamps coming up in town and it needed like, how we gonna do this? That was badass in and of itself. It was hard-boiled, it was awesome. I loved the characters doing that, but then it became drama. Oh, how do we take over this person while I'm sleeping with them? And if I had this person, Nathaniel's gonna be upset, or Richard will leave me, and then he leaves anyway. And I'm like, thank goodness. Richard was the character that I loved to hate, and I still love to hate him, and I hate him anyway. Enough about him. Then that ratio kept getting worse until the last book, which then people started saying, this doesn't feel like urban fantasy anymore. Yes, we're still in cities. Yes, there's still a mystery, crime-solving plot line. There's a procedural aspect here. And yes, that there's this badass character, but it didn't feel like urban fantasy. And most people said it was the sex. It's not the sex that's the problem. It's all the internal conflict and the personal drama that is the problem in the series. Now, like I said, this is only a problem if you wanted to read urban fantasy and someone's giving you supernatural soap opera, which is a term that I found quite apt. I think it was Brittany, on Tor.com. I don't remember. I'll put the link in the description box below, and you can check out that article that I found really funny because it put into terms what happened to the series quite nicely. But it did become a bit of a supernatural soap opera because it's so focused on everybody's feelings and everybody trying to get emotional fulfillment from their relationships rather than external events. Now that the series is more emotionally driven, people don't get that urban fantasy drive that they were, that urban fantasy vibe, that they were originally looking for. So within the series, you can quite see very clearly how even if you have the building blocks of urban fantasy, which is that urban setting, a hard-boiled character, and creatures with a horror type-esque thing, horror type features, what changed is the ratio of the time that's spent on crime fighting or, that adventure, that thriller, that mystery aspect, that mystery plot, and the personal drama, the romance, the conversations with friends, and the drama that comes outside that mystery plotline or crime or hard-boiled aspects of the series. This made me realize that ratios are so important, and we might not realize that they exist, but we definitely as readers do notice when they change. So there are series out there that, most people do not consider them urban fantasy and some do, and it really depends on where you fall on the ratio scale. Some people are okay with having lots of romance in urban fantasy because they're also romance readers, and there's a time and place for that, and everybody enjoys that, and they enjoy a bit of everything, so that's good for them. But I think for me as a reader, I like reading the genre for what it is. Like, if I'm reading a romance, I have certain expectations that are unique to the romance genre, and when I read urban fantasy, the same. So when I see a change like that, yes, I can keep reading, and sometimes I will, sometimes I won't if there are other things that piss me off about the series, such as Adams being too controlling, etc. Unless something brings it back, or there's something, or there is a character who I really want to see what happens to them. Like, for instance, in the Individual series, I really want to see what's going to happen when now that Olaf's a were-tiger, because, dude, I loved him. I love that character. It's sick and weird, but she did such a good job making him freaky, like, relatable, but, like, freaky. And then I get freaked out that I find him relatable, and then that, like, it's fueling itself, okay? The cycle is endless. It's a vicious But that keeps me going on because I start caring about the characters. Yes, the internal drama can get a bit much, but I care about the characters enough to be happy when Nathaniel grows versus Mercy, who is a pretty full-on character when she started. I mean, she knows who she is. She's very comfortable in herself, and because a lot of her mystery plot lines are externally sourced, induced, caused, whatever you want to say, the mysteries are not about her changing, but her romance did change her and her actions and what she could and could not do in a way that I found hard to swallow. Different strokes for different folks, yo. You read what you want to read. But this is just a perspective that I thought would be interesting to share. And I think we've kind of talked about in a roundabout way why certain books or series cross the line and why it's so hard to categorize it, and for different reasons, because the reason I might not consider it urban fantasy might be great reasons for another person. But when I think paranormal romance, I'm thinking Cresley Cole. I don't think she writes urban fantasy. She writes paranormal romance. That's not to say there aren't a lot of fantasy elements or they ain't a little bit of horror, just a smidge. But the romance is the main key here. And of course, she has other tenets of romance series, which is having a different couple every single book. Romance, check. Which doesn't often happen in urban fantasy, which normally follows one character or a particular set of characters through the whole series like that. Anita Blake series called the Anita Blake series. Mercy Thompson series called the Mercy Thompson series. But sometimes they kind of mesh a little too much. But there you go. Okay, guys, so you've heard what I had to say. I'm curious for you. What is your ratio? How much crime solving, action, thrilling, mystery solving you want to happen versus personal drama? What do you think makes for a good urban fantasy series or book? And if you like this kind of video, if I just talk about something like this and you really like it, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe and don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you're alerted when I get up new videos. And I hope to see you guys next time. All right, bye.